our 19-year-old says, I want to do exactly what you and Mum did, just from a psychologically much healthier place than you two.
Okay.
Explain that. What have they seen that we're not? What do you reckon? Hello and welcome to Separate Bathrooms. We would like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of this land, and pay our respects to the elders both past and present. My name's Cam Daddo.
I'm Ali Daddo.
The Sydney Morning Herald said about the couple we are speaking with today, it's a fair bet that if Jesus Christ were around today, he'd be doing what the Owens are doing in Mount Druitt. They feed the poor and house the homeless. They lead the lost and counsel the conflicted.
They're experts at unconditional love, alcoholic mums, runaway kids, petty thieves. Everyone has been welcomed at the Owens home. They're now out of it, but they lived in a 4-bedroom brick house that for well over a decade has been equal parts street kitchen and safe house, as well as a home to their 3 children.
Yeah, these words were written over a decade ago.
Yeah.
They haven't changed, evidently. They are still doing amazing work. We're going to meet the Owens. Jon is a pastor and the current CEO of the Wayside Chapel in Sydney.
And Lisa has a PhD in pharmacology and worked as a research scientist at Melbourne's Baker Institute. She's also worked as a chaplain herself at Emu Plains Jail, and she also now works at Wayside Chapel as well.
Exactly. We have a feeling the Owens are going to provide us with a perspective of life and relationship that we don't usually hear. Let's welcome Jon and Lisa to the bathroom. Lisa and Jon, this is not the first time that Jon and I have met. Mm-hmm. Jon, just take us through that. And what was your first impression of Cameron Daddo? And where did it happen?
I remember walking outside the front of the chapel on a cold winter's evening.
This is the Wayside Chapel
at the Wayside Chapel, yes. And there was this very dishevelled and deer in the headlights little puppy dog sitting there in the horseshoe, wrapped up in a beanie and too many layers, and just kind of had no idea what was going on. And I realised later it was Cameron in the middle of his filthy rich and homeless. You should have seen this guy's face, right? It was, you were responding appropriately to the situation and the conditions. And I remember watching it back and seeing that you were dealing with rats under the Bondi Pavilion.
That's correct.
That evening.
And really immersing myself with the people who were living there as well, who were doing it tough.
Yeah, look, I really appreciated the way you just dived in to that whole world, right? It wasn't, how do I get my creature comforts in? You're saying, I'm in, I'm all in. And you were all in, and it was, I had a chuckle afterwards.
Of course you did. And the thing was about that too, I knew that in however many days I was going to have a front door of my own and fruit in the bowl, and Ali was going to be there with me and our kids were going to be there. And I knew that it was very much an impermanent situation for me, and I had that perspective, which made me feel a deeper empathy for the people that were actually there at the Wayside Chapel.
But you could see in your eyes you were looking for a bit of affirmation and connection, particularly when you've spent that much time out there alone, or you think everyone seems to be against me. Who's there for me?
Yeah. Well, it had been a tough time. I remember actually having walked. I did get the train from North Bondi up to the Cross with a guy that I was sleeping beside me in the back of the pavilion there.
And without identification, it's really common for our guys, if they're stopped without a ticket, to be strip searched as well. Even just to get a meal sometimes it requires a loss of dignity, sadly.
Yeah, it's incredible. Lisa, welcome to the bathroom.
Hello.
And this is your first time podcast?
It is.
How are you feeling?
Nervous.
It's okay.
Well, you're with my wife. And
I'm nervous too.
She's the greatest at putting people at ease because she's so kind.
Aw, thanks, honey. All right, well, I'm going to go straight to Lisa with this question because I feel like it's one you will answer beautifully. How did you and Jon meet?
So Jon and I were working together in Melbourne. So we first met, I'd already been working for the organisation that we met in for several years, and Jon came along to do a 2-week course with us and then stayed for 15 years.
Wow.
So
Was it a bit of love at first sight, or was it one that was a slow grow? Or
look, he was cute.
Yeah.
There was no doubt about that.
He's still cute.
He's still cute. But I'm 5 years older than Jon.
Yeah.
So when we met, he, needed a few more footy seasons.
Spoken like a true Melburnian.
love it.
Yeah. So we actually became really good friends.
Yeah, nice.
And then from a place of friendship, we started dating, and here we are. 23 years last weekend.
Oh, well done.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you.
That's no short feat, 23 years.
It's a good start.
What were you both doing at that time?
We first met on December 2nd, 1996. 97, right, in 4A Lightwood Parade, Springvale. I remember it. And I was registering for the course where it was a 2-week, it was called a mission exposure course, where the organisation that Lisa was working for, which she was a part of founding, Urban Neighbours of Hope, was an organisation that was actually a missional order that lived and took on lifestyle commitments in what we'd call marginalised neighbourhoods. That's what we called it back then anyway. And so not only made a commitment to serving in that community, but made that commitment to living in that neighbourhood as well. So the 2 weeks I just lived in with one of their neighbours, who was a bunch of young guys who had come over as refugees from Myanmar, Burma, and did a few inputs in the morning and a bit of service in the afternoon. But I'll still remember the first words you ever said to me, darling.
Which
was, "Oh, you're that guy. $200, please." I'll never forget him.
He loves telling that story.
And why was he that guy?
And what was the $200 for?
So the $200 was for the course, and he was the guy who turned up late.
Oh,
Yeah, actually, I think the first words were, "You're late.
yeah, right.
$200, please."
We'll hear more about the work that you do today and what you've done, but can you just take us back into your backgrounds a little bit? And both of you are so much about community, about kindness, about care. What kind of upbringings did you both have that brought about your desire to work in the fields that you both work in?
I grew up in a Christian household, and my parents were very involved with the church. But part of what they did too was that they often had people come and stay with us. I remember one person who was a student, somebody else who was in the process of stopping drinking alcohol, someone else who was leaving a difficult relationship. And so I often said to my parents in the years later, I kind of was scripted to do what I ended up doing in terms of it wasn't surprising given the example that I saw them set. So my mum had one of those pantries that if extra people showed up at dinner time, the meal grew. So, yeah, I feel like I grew up with a really good example of that.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And how about you, Jon?
Yeah, so I moved over here from Malaysia, where I was born when I was very young. I don't really have any memories of that time. And Mum and Dad set up here, and the kind of way that people migrated over here is they'd come and stay with you before they settled in. So we always had family coming through, living with us until they were able to find a place of their own. Grandma moved in with us pretty shortly afterwards and lived the next 25, 30 years with us till she passed away.
Yep.
So family and caring for others was always really at the heart of it, and a lot of hospitality was involved in that. And not all of my mum's family that came over were coming over for reasons of wanting to establish a new life so much as wanting to run away from some bad old habits that they continued here. So I saw firsthand the impacts of addiction and intergenerational trauma as well. I didn't know that's what it was at the time, but it was good to see the way my parents modelled that, and there was always a big pot of food on the stove as well, so we never really had to ask if anyone could come over. Yeah.
It was already simmering.
Still is.
Yeah. Okay, so look, in Dr. Google, there's a lot of stuff on you guys about Mount Druitt. Mount Druitt is a suburb in Sydney. Can you guys just describe for our listener that doesn't know about Mount Druitt, paint a picture of the community there and how long you were there and what you were doing there?
Mount Druitt is an area of Western Sydney that it encompasses about 12 little micro suburbs that are, when they were first built, mostly social and state and public housing. I don't know across how every state refers to it differently. And so it was built in response to the 1960s, these bold social experiments. But essentially the government was tasked with trying to clear out some of the inner city slums of Newtown and Glebe and Surrey Hills. And so they bought these big tracts of land in Campbelltown and Mount Druitt, and they built all this public housing well before they built any of the infrastructure. They built most of the houses around an experimental design called the Radburn design, and you can see how the streets are constructed before there was any of the real support services. So most areas that are high levels of unemployment and intergenerational issues that emerge from unemployment, but also other issues that people face, usually are built around industries like Geelong car manufacturing. Then it closes down, then it happens. Same with Doveton. Whereas these were quite unique in that they never had industry near them, and so people were just kind of thrown out to the ends of the earth and just left to fend for themselves. Often before the garbage trucks had worked out the routes yet, or the buses had access, so they were kind of left out there, and that kind of set the identity of it's us against the world. And so any people who come in to try and help or support are often viewed with suspicion. So the model of moving into the community was quite a radical one at the time, even in the eyes of the community. I remember one lady we met really early on said, "Oh, you'll only last a couple of months here, love." Thankfully, we were able to prove her a little bit wrong by just kind of putting down roots in that neighbourhood and raising our kids there as well.
And you took a vow of poverty, correct? How did that work?
We took a vow of poverty before moving to Mount Druitt. So we were working in a multicultural suburb in the southeast of Melbourne, which is where we met.
And what was that suburb?
Springvale?
Yeah.
Yeah. Place where we met. Poverty was one of the vows that we took. So we took vows of poverty, service and obedience. The vow of poverty was designed around trying to identify as best we could with the communities that we lived amongst and served. So that meant that we were living on something that was pretty much equivalent to Centrelink plus $10 a week, I think. I guess we wanted to not be set apart too far from our neighbours.
Yeah.
Notwithstanding the fact that, like when Cam was doing the Filthy Rich and Homeless, we were both university educated with middle-class families. So we did always know that if we chose to, we would have an out.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, there were limits in terms of how much we could truly identify. But
I think another part of that is when you want to say a big yes in your life, you've got to say a bunch of pretty hardcore no's. And the way our lifestyle is structured is around, access, mobility, being able to go anywhere at the drop of a hat. So a lot of it will pull you away from your main calling in life. So we were really passionate about being well known and deeply involved in the life of that neighbourhood. And, friends ring up, do you want to go out here? You want to go do this? You want to do that? Let's, I got some tickets to go here. And so we had to say a whole lot of no's in that way to say a big yes to our community as well.
I mean, Mount Druitt's a long way from Springvale. Was the idea of moving to a northern state to really extricate yourself from your families in Melbourne and you went to Mount Druitt, or what was the reason to go to Mount Druitt? Because you could have gone to any state, really, based on that. I'm sure these communities exist in every state in Australia.
we had a fairly big and strong team in Melbourne already, and so we felt like our organisation was well placed to start something new. We knew people in Sydney, so from the point of view of moving to a place where there are already support networks in place for us, Sydney made sense. Right. And then in terms of Mount Druitt specifically, it was actually Graham Long from the Wayside Chapel who introduced us to Mount Druitt. Okay. Said, I know the sort of neighbourhood you're looking for. I'll take you for a drive. And Jon and I made trips up separately and both really strongly went, this is where we want to be home.
And did you have your two children already at that point, or?
Yes.
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
So
and they were quite little,
2 and 3. When we decided it was Sydney and when we decided it was Bidwell in Mount Druitt to go, we packed the car and got in the car. We didn't have a place to stay that night or we didn't know anything. We had nothing set or planned. We just got in the car and went, let's go. And it was up the Hume Highway that someone rang up and said, oh, would you like to use my caravan? And then a couple of hours later, someone rang up and said, oh, would you like to put that caravan in my front yard? I don't know where we would have stayed otherwise.
You're in Mount Druitt. How was it raising kids in that environment?
Yeah, look, our kids had no choice. You don't have a choice about your parents. And so it was always done in a way where we are really passionate about making sure that our values aren't just a poster on the wall, but they're how we live our lives. And so our kids got to see that up close. And there was this moment, you always question, how will they go on with this, or what sorts of people will they become, having grown up in the environment they have. And there was a moment there where I was a chaplain at the local high school as one of my roles, and the police called us up and said one of the students has been assaulted quite badly at her home. So can we bring her over to your place? She wants to come to your place, because she knew Lisa as well. And it was just a day, I think our kids were chucking a fake sickie. So they were there, and normally we tried to keep a lot of that stuff separate. We had an end of the house that was separated from the rest, from the hospitality space. And as the police brought her in, our kids saw her. They knew her. She was about 16. Our kids were about 7 and 6 at the time. And immediately one of our kids, who's all cuddly, went up to her and just started stroking her arm. Oh. And the other one went straight to the toaster and chucked 2 bits of toast on and badly spread it and brought it out. And I said, oh, Lise, look, they're us. You're the tender, loving, caressing care, and I'm just shoving Vegemite down their throat, and it's just that's who they were really as well. One was very touchy-feely and the other one was very practical. What do you need in this moment? Yeah. And just to see that come together in this act of love and care was such a really powerful moment of seeing how your lived out values often bring out the best in not only in others but in your kids too.
Without a doubt.
What's a bit like what you were saying, Lisa, before, that love is a verb, it's an action. And do you think that our kids pay more attention to what we do than what we say?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, when we were dating, she said to me once, who you are shouts so loudly in my ears I can't hear what you say. Which is a weird thing to say on a second date. But I thought, she's a fascinating creature, this one.
Yeah. Were you always completely aligned on this is exactly what we want to do, or one of you more reticent than the other, or you were just gung-ho?
I think we've been pretty fortunate actually in that we've always been pretty well aligned. So we were aligned about the work that we wanted to do in Melbourne, and then when we were ready to move, we were aligned about making the move to Sydney.
Yeah.
And I guess when it was time for us to leave Mount Druitt as well, we were aligned about that.
Yeah.
So
how many years were you in Mount Druitt?
I think it was about 10 all up, when we count them all. But we've never been out of line in terms of what we've wanted and our values, and that's the kind of advice I give to people.
What's that?
In that, work out what you want to do in life and go and do it. And then along that way, you'll meet people who have the same values as you. And so we didn't need to have, in those dating conversations where you're like, what do you like? What do you like? What do you like doing? What do you do? We already knew all that stuff about each other. We were both passionately committed to making this world a better place, and to the point where when you said, let's have our honeymoon in Calcutta at Mother Teresa's Home for the Dying, we went, yeah, let's do it.
And that's what happened? Did you do it there?
we did.
Because Lisa said it's not just boy meets girl, falls in love and sails off into the sunset. It's two people who are passionate about changing the world are brought together, and we start our married life the way we want to continue it. And so, off to the slums of Calcutta and working in the orphanage in the afternoons and the home for the dying in the mornings. And that was a real foundation stone of how we wanted to live our lives together. And it was, I'll tell you, I'll also make a little confession, is we've never lived alone together.
We haven't.
No. We've always had someone living in our house. And then we had our own kids as well. So we've never just had any couple of years of just me and Lisa. So we are actually getting that opportunity in the first week of September. We'll be, for the first time we've been together 25 years. The first, I remember we came from honeymoon and we were running a house for 10 asylum seekers. And that was, and it never really stopped. We've had heaps of people, but, we can't wait. Seriously.
Really? Because I can imagine you two just continuing to open your doors the way you've travelled
Like
so far.
2 days in, you'd be like, F this.
We're moving into a tiny place, so that will help.
Okay.
Right.
Wow, yeah, true.
Well, we've still got a couch and a bit of hospitality.
We
We'll
do.
be a bit core to who we are, but,
For sure.
just the two of us, we can't wait. We're tickled.
Is there, do you really always agree? Do you have a way of working things out? Like, I'm sure you barrack for you look like an Essendon supporter.
No, John's an Essendon
Or
supporter.
that one of you does. I'm getting Essendon vibes from one of you. Who do you follow?
Used to be Carlton, but now it's GWS, I think.
Oh, okay.
okay.
Well, because they're in the west of Sydney. So how does that go when GWS play Essendon and the fact that the
This is
Bombers...
the hard-hitting
how
questions.
good was that when they beat GWS after what they did to us last year?
Oh, dear. No, look, we could do 10 podcasts on
footy?
AFL and Essendon, and it's not many people I meet in Sydney who want to talk about it, actually.
Oh, John, you've met the person.
mate, all
Trust
day.
me, you've met the
And
person.
Are you an Essendon fan?
No. Yes. I am. We
Yeah.
both are.
I am
so,
now.
So that was the thing, when we met, our Sydney girl, I'm Melbourne, and footy was always such a big thing in our family, and growing up, we played it and stuff. And then, so yeah, back to you guys. Is there something that you do to come together when you actually do see things a little differently? Or are you telling me that you really don't see anything differently?
No, sometimes we do. Of course, sometimes we do. Thankfully, it's never been the big things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think if you're aligned on the big things, you can work the little things out. So,
The first couple of years of marriage, it takes a lot of negotiation and navigation and, even learning how to share a bed. So, because we hadn't lived together until that point. Do you remember that first time we were living in, was it Regent Street? And one of the guys from Africa was so cold, he was wanting to come into our room and hop into bed with us, and just to warm up. Poor guy. He's come from
Yes.
from Africa to Melbourne, down to
winter.
near
Holy
Dandenong.
cow.
And
Yeah.
he's just like, what's going on?
So how did that go? What was that conversation like? Mate.
that was a no.
Yeah. Here's an extra
I was like,
blanket.
we're pretty open to anything, but not that, mate. So, that brings back some memories. They've all gone on to get permanent residence and are doing amazing things in this country.
They are.
Including one of them who has a kid who nearly won Australian Idol a couple of years ago as well.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah,
Fantastic.
doing really, really well.
Now, you have your two biological children, but you've also adopted a girl at quite an older age, right? How did you come to meet her, and how did that come about?
Okay. Jazzy was one of our youth group kids.
Okay.
And she's a pretty special kid, really,
Yeah.
full of life and energy and lots of energy, and used to spend a fair bit of time at our house, got along well with our children. Through meeting her, we got to know her mum, and sadly her mum was dying. So she actually asked whether after she passed away we'd be able to have Jazzy as part of our family.
Yeah.
So, she was 15 when she moved in, 16 when her mum passed away. Stayed with us till she was 18, moved out with a partner, came back, as they do. So, and she's 30 now.
Right.
So,
Now, even that conversation, Lisa came home. She said, I've just been at Karen's house, and Karen's asked me if we'll take Jazz on. And so I just assumed that's a yes then, John. And that was pretty much the conversation.
Yeah.
Right.
Amazing.
Right.
So we've never really, we only really argue about directions, in the car. But and then they invented the maps on the phone.
I was going to say you can get mad at Waze or Google
Yeah.
Maps.
Yeah,
you know,
makes
as
it a lot
opposed to
easier.
the-
There's a lot of less arguing in the car, no doubt.
Yeah, instead of the Melways.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
No
Or
way sitting
Gregory's
in
in Sydney,
Well,
wasn't it?
Gregory's, mate, come on. It's the Melways, mate.
The Melways
And so-
on the drive, on the passenger seat. Oh, bloody hell. Where
And slide off the seat and pull over.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm not
God.
pretending. Like we have little Barneys over things, and Lisa has this thing she has to be exactly on time,
Right.
And I'm like, it's just an estimate when they say 12 o'clock, and she's like, no, we've got to be there, and we have those little niggles around that, but we argue the small stuff. Otherwise, the big stuff is we just go, what do we need to do, to be able to work this thing out.
Yeah, I love that.
So-
Aligned on the big things. That
Yeah.
makes sense. Yeah.
On that, the mindset, there was a paragraph in one of the articles that I read. Like, it goes like this. Besides everything worth stealing has already been stolen, Jon says. We had one woman who robbed us blind. Cash, cameras, someone even took the kids' piggy bank once. We know who took it all, but we're still their friends. Who else is going to love them? How do you get to that mindset?
Oh, look, I think for me, one of the things is love isn't a feeling, it's a verb. So it's something you do, it's something you choose. In choosing to love people, you choose to look for the good in them rather than focus on things like whether or not they stole your kid's money box. It's not always easy, but choosing to engage with people and find commonality and see the good in them and receive from them too, I think, has been really important for us.
Well, you embody that, the way you love people, and you have a really beautiful, loving, accepting, non-judgmental presence in people's lives. So they often feel very comfortable to be open with you very quickly, actually. So that's how we've always kind of worked well together in that kind of context. So she's like Terry Danaher, I'm like Alan Izzard. So she...
Okay, so for everyone else in Australia, we're talking baby bombers in the middle of the 80s.
Terry Danaher was the centre half back, so he was a strong, solid support.
Yeah.
And Alan Izzard he's a rover. He just runs around and creates chaos in the space. So that's what I do. So that's how we work. We've always worked that way. I get him, I bring him home, and then Lisa loves them.
Yeah.
Lisa's a lot prettier than Alan
Yes.
Izzard. All due respect to you, Alan Izzard, if you're listening.
Absolutely.
Well, a little ginger-haired little whippet just running around. But, that's a silly analogy. So Lisa, I'll bring the party, but, Lisa will...
You make things fun.
Yeah, that's right.
You do.
And so I bring the fun, but Lisa brings the love and care.
Okay.
So,
You've seen some experiences, no doubt, of people at their lowest point. Do you get burnout? And if you do, does your mental health ever get affected? And is there something that you do for yourselves that really helps every time or all the time?
Well, having listened to your podcast, I know that you're big believers in therapy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and so are we. Yeah, that's been something that's been really important for us. I think I see someone every week. So there's that space always to be able to process things as they arise rather than needing to wait. We didn't always have those people in our lives, and I think that was to our detriment. Yeah, I think we're much healthier people now that we do. So,
Do you do therapy too, Jon?
well, yes,
Yeah.
I have a lot of therapy. So I came late to the party.
Yeah.
But, having a family that's quite neurodiverse, that also has struggles with anxiety and depression and bipolar, as well as ADHD, the whole mix, is learning to navigate that world requires therapy, and quite a lot of it. So something I've been on a journey for about eight years now, but also in my role I have some clinical support, particularly around I'm exposed in my role to a lot of, pretty raw end of humanity. And when something strikes that is something I find hard to resolve within myself, I don't want to use vulnerable people as my therapists, the group as therapists, inappropriately just spill out details of stories. So I'll immediately go, a friend once said, it's when your pots are boiling over and you can't control them, when things slip out of your mouth that really shouldn't. Yeah. And so that's when I go to my clinical therapist and say, look, blah. Yeah, so I often have to pay for his therapy afterwards as well. So, it's pretty intense.
His poteth boileth over to it.
I remember once just going, "Wah," and he said, so that's been happening your whole life? I said, no, that was last week.
Wow.
It's just like, oh my goodness. We both had very similar experiences very early on. around burnout where I was running a youth club and there was a lot of kids from East Timor who was seeking asylum. And at the end of one session, we just said, it's Christmas coming up. What do you wish for? And one little girl said, look, I wish that I'm not deported because I'm not ready to die. And that was a real pivotal moment for me where I said, it's not going to be a quick fix. A lot of people get into this kind of work expecting to fix people, and that's a big part of our philosophy is no one's a problem to be solved, they're a person to be met.
Yeah.
But if you want to see change, it's about walking alongside someone for a long, long, long time with no promise of reward. So at that moment with that young girl, I remember making a promise to myself is to say, no matter how hard I go and work, I always have to pull myself back from the brink because if I burn out, then who's going to be there for her? So that was a really grounding moment for me in that space. And, I don't think we've been exhausted, often. But once a year I'll come home and I'll sleep for about 20 hours. I don't know, just run out of adrenaline.
Yeah, sure.
But it kind of keeps us both going. Someone said you won't make poverty history till you make poverty personal. Right. And till you walk alongside someone and you walk and see inside their world and that's what gives you the grace and the empathy to be able to realise that, people are so different from each other and some have experiences that, they just need to be held. And as you hold them, they're going to push, they're going to test. They're going to say, is this real? Do you really love me? Because what about this and what about that?
Yeah.
And almost that rejection sensitivity where they'll say, I'll push you away before you push me away. And they can't really argue with an experience of grace and love and forgiveness. And often that's a beautiful thing to be able to offer, though it is it's a radical act, making the decision to love. And, thank you for loving me, Lise.
That's been my great pleasure.
Because you've been on the end of a few assaults, I believe. You've had a chair, crunched over your head, and
You've really done the deep dive here, haven't you?
You have a very
We
good
don't mess
producer.
around here, John.
You have a very good producer too.
It's happened a few times. Like, when you want to get involved in people's lives, you just got to go all in, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes put your body on the line. And I'll give you this one story that when I looked at you and realised that I couldn't love you any more than I already did, was Lisa was 8 months pregnant once, and there was the horrible sounds of a domestic abuse happening, and between this huge, huge man and his wife, and Lisa just, without hesitating, just ran downstairs from our flat to their flat, kind of flung the door. It had spilled out into the courtyard, and you jumped 8 months pregnant in between both of them, and you said, "Stop, because I love you both."
Oh, wow.
And I was just looking frozen in terror from the balcony as this act of, we talk about love and changing the world, but it was not until you put your body on the line that I saw that come alive. And so when this woman says, it's more than a feeling, it's a verb, it's a verb, you live it out every day.
It's beautiful.
It is.
No.
That's
hot.
That is hot, man. Hey, how do you guys relax? What do you do to have fun?
Trashy TV.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Like what? What do you like?
We just saw an episode, Monk Season 2, that you're in.
Oh, yes.
You did, right, yes.
Way back.
You were
Took
the
that way
dodgy Australian photographer.
Dodgy
boyfriend.
Daryl.
Yes, Dodgy Daryl, that's
still
right.
remember the
He was
character.
Daryl Dirtbag. He had some weird,
Daryl Dirtbag. Yeah.
don't know, some double D surname or something.
Oh, my God.
You'd...
There you go. So I
Hey,
did
they're
work
going to
as an
interview us
actor.
in a couple of days' time.
There he is. Funny how those things turn up. Goggle box? You goggle boxes?
John wants to be on Gogglebox.
Do you?
Yes.
Are you great on
the
Gogglebox?
banter in our house across the TV
Yeah.
is hilarious.
Yeah.
Our kids are some of the wittiest, funniest people I've ever met.
Are
And so we
they,
just-
are they at all in the same field as either of you? Are they interested in doing something in that field?
Our 21-year-old says that they'll never do that. Our 19-year-old says, I want to do exactly what you and Mum did, just from a psychologically much healthier place than you two.
Okay.
Explain that. What do they look? What are they seeing that we're not?
What do you reckon?
You guys think you're pretty healthy, you two.
I think They could see there's no such thing as a completely pure motive coming out of an unbroken vessel. You know, we all have brokenness. And that was one of the points I wanted to make about our wedding that I remember quite vividly, is we clearly made the point this isn't two incomplete people completing one another. This is two broken people being brought together and offering their brokenness to the world. And we did that with a ritual of candles and a ceremony there, but we just really wanted to push against that you complete me, because that is one of the seeds of a lot of the gendered violence that we see, is this demand for you to be my whole world and to be my everything, as opposed to just saying, well, you know, who are we going to be on the road together? So that's kind of a very powerful thing that I always remember about the way we've always sought to live our lives. That's why we have therapy in it.
That's exactly right.
But that's where our kid can also see. I think they could see as much of the push factors as the pull factors.
Yeah.
And so,
Do you do therapy together? Do you do couples therapy?
We have.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not at the moment.
when
It
one
was
of our
very
kids ended
helpful
up in
when we
hospital,
did.
we realised we needed to our marriage to bear a lot of weight. And with a few of the diagnoses that they've had, you know, if they kind of give you the statistics saying, oh, there's a 90% divorce rate for couples who have raising kids with these kinds of struggles. And so that's what was triggering for us to go off and say, look, let's do some hard yards now.
Is that to get on to the same page, or to really have a third person listening to your different point of views?
Yeah, it was a bit of both. He was really helpful in terms of some things about parenting too. I mean, when we talk about how we live our life, we have always been on the same page.
Yeah.
In terms of how we parent, maybe not always quite so much. So we needed a space to do that exploration and to get to the point where we could be on the same page, because ultimately, it's not helpful for our relationship or for our kids.
Yeah, sure.
If we're not.
You've both seen a lot of suffering of the human spirit. Is there any particular advice that you give to people that moves them or helps them the most? Is there something that commonly you've done throughout your life that you often say?
No, probably not anything I say beyond listening and validating their emotions and their experience.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I've got any great wisdom I can impart, but I feel like I can listen well and help them to know that someone cares about what it is that they have been through.
Right. Yeah.
What would you say to that, John?
Oh, look, I can only think about people. You know, I was at a deathbed of a woman who had grown up abused all through her life, and you know, she sat there on her deathbed and she'd, you know, had lived a life there. She quickly got hooked onto drugs because of who she was living with, and ended up working the streets for many years. And, you know, she sat on the deathbed, she kind of said, Father, you know, am I worthy? You know, she was really asking those questions. And, you know, and I just said, darling, you know, there's going to be a standing ovation when you walk into heaven tonight. And then, you know, she looked at me and smiled, and for her funeral we played Pink's You're Fucking Perfect as she was wheeled in. And, you know, it was just that moment of beauty and grace and love that really filled the room as we all kind of just got together to celebrate her life and everything that she brought to us in it. So that pretty much sums up the Wayside right there. You know, that's the kind of place I joined, and it's a place that we now work together there, and it's the kind of place that we hope to be able to continue to share that love with people who really sorely need it.
Yeah. We do a 5-minute shower, a 2-minute shower.
We're conserving water. 5 minutes. Let's go for the 2-minute shower. Can you guys both answer these questions?
What do you miss when you're not together?
Chatting.
She's my anchor, so I'm often just rudderless. So,
Okay. Oh, a time in your life that you'd like to revisit?
Ooh, like a season or a moment?
Anything.
A moment was actually us and the two youngest kids. We did an evening walk on a volcano in Bali, and I remember the conversations we had on the way up and on the way back, and it was just us in the group with 2 guides in this great expanse of beauty. And if you ask the kids, that was one of their best moments as well.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
See, there's a moment I'd like to go back into to not do, and there's a moment I'd like to go back into just to check it out.
Yeah, right.
All right. So
Yeah,
what I would not do is when I was going to propose to her in Marriage Road in Mulgrave, and we had like an argument over directions.
So it always was wrong.
So
We're
I
using a Gregory.
Still, you're like, where are you going? This is not off. This is Springvale Road. And you saw it was Marriage Road. And I was so angry, but I still stopped. I was such a jerk when we were dating. I don't know why you stuck around with me. And, then I kind of slowed down and then just sped off and drove us home.
you did.
Drove you home, dropped you off, let you go. Well, I would like that moment back. I'd redo that. I wouldn't do that.
I don't think we've ever had someone who wants a moment back.
I think one other time.
Really?
Yeah, I do remember one other time.
I want that moment back.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I think someone said the times that I've hurt people is.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, but the one I'd like to look was when I proposed to you, Ackland Street. We recreated our first date, which was at the Ackland Street Cake Shop.
I was going to say, was it over a cake?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Do you remember the cake?
The Ackland special from the Ackland Cake Shop on Ackland Street.
that's right. And we recreated our first date and went to St Kilda Beach, and I got down on one knee, and because we were in the vow of poverty, I got down on one knee and gave you the ring that I'd got out of the 40-cent machine, and it was.
And
But
the
I
4 Super Bowls.
And the 4 Super Bowls that I got first. I'm not tight. I gave it to you all.
They bounce.
You had to keep getting that ring. There's a ring in there somewhere.
Just come out.
You got a red one, an orange one, a green one.
What's better than that? 4 Super Bowls?
And I would probably tell the bloke that just stopped really awkwardly right next to us just to keep moving.
Yeah.
Just to
Nothing to
have
see
that.
here, fella.
That's right.
To have that moment back.
Nice.
It's a very vivid and precious one. Every
Right.
time we go to Melbourne, we pop in and get an Ackland special together.
Oh, I love it.
Final question. Describe each other in one word.
Exceptional.
Love personified.
Oh, yep. I get
Well,
that.
you two, thank you for gracing us with your presence today. This has been a really fabulous chat, and good luck. And the world, if we can clone you 50 times, even more,
Yeah.
we'd be in a way better place. So
Agreed.
thanks so much for coming in,
Yeah.
Thank you for having us. It's been lovely to be here.
Thank you so much.
and great to see you again, John.
I know. And we're going to talk Essendon.
I could tell that was happening. What magical, humble, incredible people they both are.
Yeah.
And we just heard like the tiniest amount of their stories
We
as
did.
well.
And as John was leaving, he said, you know what I really do to relax? I watch Essendon football games.
Mm-hmm.
He loves that.
Yeah.
I like him even more now.
I'm sure you do.
We're going to spend a lot more time together. me
I
and
just
him.
like both of them. The work that they've done and the kindness that they share
Yes.
and, you know, the impact of the lives that they have made. They were just also sharing about a little boy who they were there when he was born, and he's now has a scholarship to a private school in Sydney, and they also knew his dad before he, like, I mean, just the, you know, the rollover of generational
Yeah.
impacts of
Yeah.
kindness that they're making it's so special.
Yes, and their commitment to community and growing community. It's I had a feeling that we were going to hear something different and hear something special. We certainly did.
Absolutely.
They're unique, and like I said, if you could clone them, or just all of us embody a little bit more of what they're
Yeah.
just a little bit of what they're extolling is something
Indeed.
wonderful.
Yeah.
We will catch up with you, listener, next time
Indeed.
on Separate Bathrooms.
Thanks for listening.